Hello, and welcome to CivilNet. Today our guest is Basel Issmail. He's a resident of Armenia with roots from the coastal regions of Syria. He's not normally an activist, but there are very disturbing things going on in his homeland right now, and he is here to spread the word about it. So Basel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, many Armenians are familiar with this situation. In late last year, we had Turkish-backed militia group, HTS, topple the Assad regime, which had ruled for decades in Syria. Now, this takeover made many Armenians worried, for one thing, and a lot of people, they didn't know what was going to happen, what would fill this vacuum. But in the first months, at least, the Armenian community was cautiously optimistic that maybe things will be okay. However, in the past few days, there has been a spiraling of violence in the coastal regions where you're from. It's an Alawi homeland. You are partly Alawi as well, and so you have insight into what's going on there. So can you tell us about how this government change has affected the community and what's led to where we are now?
So first of all, to give a little bit context of the Syrian communities, so we have lived the minorities and the majorities, we all lived coherent and we coexisted for centuries in Syria, and we lived peacefully and we didn't have any boundaries between us. In the years of Assad, there was a lot of misconception of that minorities were pro-Assad and they were behind the crimes that he made during this crisis. But actually, minorities were one of the most communities which suffered from this regime. They were the communities, they were between the hammer and the anvil.
And that was a common thing that I would hear in the West, like, oh, well, the Alawis are all okay and they're all being supported. But what you're saying is there was much more suffering all around.
Yep, and the other thing that most minorities, especially Alawites, were scared of security forces, especially on the coastal areas. So they wouldn't dare to say anything about the situation. Even the ones who are abroad, they were scared for their families' lives.
So what we're seeing now is the HTS has sent in forces to kind of clear out remnants of the Assad regime in the coastal areas. There was some resistance to that. And now what appears to be happening is just targeted execution-style killings of hundreds or even thousands of Alawi people. Can you give us more details about this?
So to give a little bit of context of what happened when HTS took over Syria. So at first, there were no bloodshed. There was a lot of supporting for these forces, and we were behind it because we have got enough from the previous regime, and we saw a glimpse of hope in any new regime that would bring freedom and justice to the country. One of the things that Alawite community did to support the new government and show that we are behind it, they were the first and almost the only community which gave all its weapons to the new government, and we were like an armed community from that point. Army forces are poorly trained. They were trained, as I heard, for less than a month, and they were released. Some of them have some hard feelings and bad feelings towards the previous regime and misconception about the community that lives there. They were raised, some of them were raised that Alawites are the enemy. So the massacres were made mostly by those extremists. When they started enter the villages, they killed whole families, every living person in each house. They were looting houses. Also, in some villages, they burned the house. And the most disturbing thing is that when extremists did those massacres and committed these crimes. They were proud of it, and they posted it on social media. And there were like part of the community who were pro this act, and they were like encouraging for more massacres to happen. And it was very unfortunate to see this kind of inhumanity.
Now, this is a form of terrorism that we in Armenia also know well, because over the past few years we've had multiple incursions into Armenian territory by Azerbaijan along with the 2020 war, and during those periods they also were uploading horrible crimes to social media. It's a form of terrorism, really, against the whole community. I mean, it's horrible to think, but yeah, things like Instagram and TikTok are actually now a form of war. We saw it with the Armenian case, and now we're seeing it in Syria, unfortunately. So something else I'd like to bring up is we've already heard a report that an Armenian father and son were murdered in Latakia. Are the other minority groups in danger as well?
So this type of extremists that exist in Syria right now, they don't differentiate between minorities. A minority is a minority. If you are not having their same mindset, or you have been raised in their in the same place that they were raised, they see you as an enemy. And the unfortunate thing is that the extremists were killing cold-blooded, and they had no morality or any human boundaries, and they were proud of these acts. And there are some videos which show these extremists laughing on top of the bodies that they killed. And regarding other communities and minority groups in Syria, so this extremist knows no religion, they know no morality at all, and they were showing proudly and saying that all minorities are in danger. And if you are like, if I quote exactly what they said, even if you are holding a cross, you are targeted, and you are not a believer to us. So no one is safe from this kind of extremists and minds which are totally foreign to the Syrian community, which coexisted for centuries together, and we did not know that this kind of mindset even exists.
So now, this has been going on for some days, but there's very little reporting about it. Why is the mainstream media so slow to get the story out?
So, first of all, there are some media outlets, I don't want to mention them exactly. They have links to some countries which have benefits, and they want the current government to have a shiny image, to see it as a relief for the Syrian people, and to have support from the world to keep this regime going. And the other thing that there is no media outlets on the ground on coastal areas or in Syria. We are very isolated, and there is no media outlet on the ground or media press or reporters on the coastal area of Syria. So me and a group of young people like me who flee the country to find a better place and to be far away from the conflict that happened years ago, and not to join the army and be part of the bloodshed that happened over a decade. We were feeling very paralyzed because our families are still in Syria, and they are facing this fear every day. like it reached a certain point where when I talk to my family, and it happened to a lot of my friends as well, they say, like, I try to relieve them and say everything will be okay. They tell me if I keep living till tomorrow, then I hope everything would be okay.
Well, we understand where you're coming from, because we've gone through the same thing and felt the same hopelessness about the not being reported on from the Artsakh War and many others. But this is a story that also involves Armenians. But this is not just an Armenian story or an Alawite story, it's a humanity story. And so we really appreciate you taking the time to spread that word and doing what you can for your people. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining CivilNet.